Hey guys, StatKing here with another edition of Dark Powerrr. Unfortunately, there was no episode of NWA Powerrr this week. The NWA released a statement that they would, despite episodes having been taped, they will not be airing them for continuity's sake and cohesion's sake while the spread of COVID-19, the novel coronavirus, is still going on. They've also postponed the Crockett Cup as well as their TV tapings that were going to be happening at the JPB studios. So because of that, we have an episode of Dark this week. But again, as I did last week, I would like to say I hope everybody is staying safe. Everybody's washing their hands, taking the precautions, the social distancing, all that good stuff. I have the, luxury of being able to work from home. So I've now started working from home with my job. But I know many of you don't have that. And so I feel for you. This is a worldwide pandemic. I mean, that's what the pandemic means. But it's just incredible to see how something can bring an entire planet to its knees. And the crazy thing is the world keeps turning, right? The world keeps on ticking. This is a blip to Mother Nature. All of the plants, all of the animals, they're still going pretty strong. But it reminds everybody in these times of how much we need each other and how much we need something to take our minds off of things. And that's where something like AEW Dark, Dynamite, Raw, SmackDown, Power, Impact, any and all of the wrestling that we watch on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis comes to play. And it's important to remember that. And it's important that I know, for example, there was a empty arena show for indie wrestlers. I know that on Saturday, March 21st, there is going to be a warehouse empty arena show that's streaming on independentwrestling.tv that's sponsored by Freelance Wrestling and Pro Wrestling Tees. I only know about this because Freelance is based out of Chicago. I've been to many of their shows. Kylie Ray, who is their current champion, was one of the initial signees to AEW. So it's good to see that the community, you guys, us at True Heels, we're all kind of in this together, and we know we're in this together, and we're trying to work as one team, one family, one community to get through this together. And with that PSA over, not a public swole announcement, but a PSA nonetheless, let's go straight into Dark. So this week's episode of Dark had 4 matches. It had Peter Avalon versus Colt Cabana, the Hybrid 2 versus Brandon Cutler and Michael Nakazawa, Penelope Ford versus Riho, Christopher Daniels versus Stu Grayson. So they're all quick matches, but they are good matches in the sense that they're doing little things to move story along. That's something that I've talked about previous episodes about how they're now starting that shift with Dark. We'll see how that continues, especially with Dynamite taking place at the Daily Place. I think they're going to be doing empty arena shows from now on, so we'll see what happens with Dark before and after. But going straight into it, we have Colt Cabana. Boom, boom, Colt Cabana. Got a great theme song. But he's coming out to face Peter Avalon. He dispatches with Peter Avalon with relative ease. Good match to help build Colt, to help introduce him more and more to audiences. A lot of people know who he is, right? That's if you are a hardcore wrestling fan or somebody who watches a lot or knows a lot about wrestling in the indies, you know who Colt Cabana is. If you paid attention during the Art of Wrestling podcast that he ran when he had CM Punk on there, and that turned into a lawsuit here in Chicago in Cook County, where they were being sued by the doctor, the WWE doctor that Punk kind of dragged through the mud, so to speak, talking about the what he perceived to be as improper medical care. And Cabana's kind of had his name in the news for that, plus the wrestling, plus the podcast, plus being associated with PWT. And so now that he's in AEW, they are trying to highlight him more or showcase him more to an audience who may not know him, right? And so that's what a match with Peter Avalon does. Like, it's just a chance to show what Colt Cabana can do. I will say, despite the fact that I understand that Colt Cabana is more of a comedy wrestler, that Superman pin is one of the most annoying things I've ever seen. And I know that's hyperbole, but it is very annoying. It just doesn't make sense to me, but it's not for me, right? Like, he's more of a comedy wrestler. So good match to get him more acclimated to an AEW crowd, and to get the AEW crowds more acclimated to him. Next, we have the Hybrid 2 versus Brandon Cutler and Michael Nakazawa. Hybrid 2 pick up the win. Short match. But what this is doing is it's keeping Hybrid 2 in the mix when it comes to tag team wrestling and the standings in AEW, but it's also furthering the storyline with Brandon Cutler, Nakazawa, and Avalon about they're all losing matches and who's going to be the one who gets a win in AEW. And it's something that they're highlighting during Being the Elite. So to see it continue on Dark is really good. So now when you see somebody, like, let's say you don't watch AEW Dark, and why wouldn't you, of course, but let's say for a moment that you don't watch Dark for whatever reason, but you do watch Being the Elite. Well, when you see those scenes of Avalon and Cutler and Nakazawa talking about their losses, you got to wonder, well, I'm not seeing them on Dynamite, so where are these losses coming from? It's got to be from Dark. So now you have maybe another reason to make that switch to start watching Dark, whereas previously you weren't. Who knows? Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But that's one thing that they're doing to try to increase that viewership of Dark, as well as using storylines on Dynamite and being the Elite. Well, I mean, yes, this is one, but to build that awareness of Dark as a viable second show. Next, we have a great match. Penelope Ford defeats Riho in kind of a stunner match. This is coming out of the match with I saw it live. The pre-Revolution match, where it was, I can never pronounce her name, Yuki Sakazawa, I think that's the last name, tagged with Riho versus Penelope Ford and Britt Baker. And this match is kind of building out of that, right? Like, now we had the tag match, two people, obviously it's a tag, but two people in a tag match. Now we're just taking the individuals from that respective teams. You thought I was going to go with the middle finger, but I didn't. Good save on my part, but I still didn't figure out how to pronounce Yuki's last name. I will work on that. But in this match, you see Penelope Ford pick up a win over Riho, and that's big, right? Because any win over Riho is automatically big. This is the first AEW Women's Champion, the longest reigning AEW Women's Champion, and it's somebody who the company is building around and built for. So if somebody gets a win over her, now it takes that person and puts them in a different light. And so it'll be interesting to see where they go with Penelope Ford coming out of this match. I think they do have a match on Dynamite the very next day, but overall, it's a building block for Penelope Ford to get her further in the women's division. And kind of, I mean, outside of Nyla and Britt, there aren't too many heels. I mean, you had that moment with Bea Priestley, but is it really? It's not really heelish if the heel attacks another heel, at least to me. But I kind of believe in rather firm face-heel dynamics. And you can have your tweeners, but your tweeners should be few and far between. And Bea's just, I mean, she's a heel, but she's not doing anything. That action of turning on her tag team partner in the form of Nyla Rose, that's just her being Bea Priestley. It's not necessarily her going above and beyond to make us want to boo her. If it was a face champion, it would have been different. Anyway, finally, the main event of the night is Christopher Daniels against Stu Grayson. Chris Daniels is gonna pick up the win, showing that the old wily veteran still has it going. SCU all the way. And Chris Daniels is doing this as a way to prove that there is no Exalted One. And if there is an Exalted One, he should probably show his face. And if he was going to show his face, maybe he'll do it on the next episode of Dynamite. Who knows? If you're watching this, I'm taping this, full disclosure, on Friday, so we know by now who the Exalted One is. But if you don't, make sure you watch Dynamite, because it's, I guess, a bit of a surprise. It was kind of an expected thing. We weren't sure who it might be, but there were a lot of names that were in the running, and one of those names is who it actually was. But this match is good. It's a solid match, nice back and forth, and kind of the thing for me is that it's showing Christopher Daniels is head of talent relations, right? And so he's doing his best behind the scenes, but when he's in the ring, it's great that he's able to help put talent over. Like, he makes Stu Grayson look good during this match, and it's not that it's difficult to do because Stu is bad or anything like that. It's difficult to do in general. It's very underrated, the things that Dolph Ziggler or Chris Jericho or Shawn Michaels back in the day could and can do. They can make somebody who we don't really consider that great look amazing, look phenomenal. I mean, there's a reason why Vince, who at the time was not fully sold on somebody like AJ Styles, gives him a match against Chris Jericho at WrestleMania. Because even though AJ loses, to an audience that does not know him as well, or may not know him as well, he looks phenomenal, right? And so having somebody in your company who can do that is really good. And that somebody, or at least one of the somebodies in AEW, is Chris Daniels. And in a match that's just over 10 minutes long, he does a very good job of getting Stu Grayson over as a threat, and getting Stu Grayson and the Dark Order over as somebody that we're really going to have to figure out what their end game is, because they've been foiled previously. So now if they do get the Exalted One, are they going to change their somewhat losing ways and all of a sudden pick things up? And if they are, this match is a great example of what can be done if they get their focus back, if they get the Exalted One with them. So with that, as there is no episode this week of NWA Powerrr or Circle Squared or anything like that, I will bid you guys farewell and adieu. But remember, stay safe. We're all in this together, and I hope to see you guys again soon next week for another edition of AEW Dark, NWA Powerrr. We'll see what's going on with NWA. But until next time, guys, stay safe.